Hey, I'm Simone.
And I'm Jess. We're two long distance best friends who are states away.
But our bond has never been closer. From spirituality to spirited conversations.
We're here to share them with you.
So, welcome to Fly Talks.
Come fly with us for a bit. Hello.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode
5. Period. We're bilingual. We're bilingual around here.
Hey, guys.
Welcome back to Fly Talks, y'all. We are, as always, excited to be here bringing y'all another episode. This episode today speaks to mental health. I think often within spiritual communities, there's often a difference between mental health and spirituality, and oftentimes people tend to separate them, feeling that going to God is the ultimate solution when it comes to dealing with mental health. And granted, we know that God helps in all of our problems. However, I think it is important to discuss, the real life aspects of mental health, how that could help your day to day, and the importance of getting professional help on top of your spiritual help. So just a little bit about both of our backgrounds. I have dealt with clinical depression as well as anxiety. And Jess, if you would like to share it yourself. I'm like, I don't want to tell everybody your business.
I'm diagnosed with bipolar depression. So bipolar 2 disorder is what it's known as.
Yes. And so they both have their impact on our lives. But I know today we really want to focus on Jessica's story and just, how that has just come about in her life. So, Jess, what was one of the defining moments where you recognized, like, oh, something is different about the way I think and how you feel mentally?
I can date that back to college.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's weird because I'm also a psych major, which is the ironic part.
Right.
But that cusp of like 19 was really when, like, I used to be in my room and I remember one of my best friends had to get me from underneath my actual bed. So there were these highs and these heightened times, but they were very rare. But for the most part, I felt a lot of deep depression. And I think the biggest part I think I wanted to elaborate on this conversation is how functional depression can look.
Yeah.
And I think that because I don't present as like unable to maneuver, it's not as easy. And I don't think people kind of take people seriously, especially when it comes to Black women.
Absolutely.
We knuckle through a lot of things. And I just think it's something that needs to be addressed, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. To be able to function through depression or any type of like mental stress or disorder, essentially, I think is almost a blessing and a curse when it comes to Black women. I think just because of the systemic issues that we deal with, we kind of have to muster through things, and we're very rarely given the chance to express those moments. And so, I mean, when did you realize that you needed help beyond just functioning and going through everyday life?
Right. So my biggest moment when I got the final diagnosis, because prior to this, the last diagnosis, I was diagnosed with PMDD, which is a disorder that's around your menstrual. And it was because it was so cyclical, right? So it's funny because now the bipolar, it also aligns with being cyclical. So it just felt like it was something that would happen so randomly, but also not randomly. Like I can almost see it coming. And I think that's why they aligned it with my period. But for this time around, what I experienced was a manic episode, which I've never when you have bipolar depression, your go-to is depression.
Yeah.
So the mania is the part that like solidifies the fact that you have both.
Yeah.
So I've never really felt so high in that sense of like what do they call it? Grandiosity
Yeah.
and confidence where it was like, oh, I'm like so I never really correlated it with manic. But I ended up going to this is so funny. So okay, so it's not funny, but it is. Okay. So circa, let me say 2021. I may be lying, but I think it is 2021
Mhm.
because it was right after COVID. COVID was 2020.
Yes.
Okay. So yes, it was 2021. I ended up having I really do got mental health and we could okay.
Nah,
I'm
y'all
sorry
really
because
do
it's
got
like
mental health issues.
I do because we just did the grief episode and I was like, I had a breakdown at work. I had
Yeah.
another breakdown at work at a different time. So and that should be very telling. But so
That
I
should be
was
very
at
true.
work, high stress job. And I think that's the first thing that I would tell anybody. I'm an educator, and I think now that I know my diagnosis, there's a lot of things that they suggest that you don't do because
Mm.
it's an ever changing environment. So it's not like you go to work, you type, then you come home. The environment fluctuates, right? So you can have a kid that's bad one day. You can have like it's so
Yeah.
unstable that you don't really know what you're walking into. Um but needless to say, I was dealing with that. There was also a lot of, pressure in different areas. And at that time, prior to that, I was diagnosed with ADHD as well.
Mhm.
So I was on Adderall, which made me very angry. So I was
Mm.
like very snappy. And just for anybody, I guess before I get into this, I've had a very long history of being misdiagnosed. So I kind of am going to bounce in and out of diagnoses. And I think it actually helps because it'll wrap it up in a way that I can see how I got here, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so yeah, so ended up just being very stressed, overwhelmed at work. It caused me to have a really big panic attack, which at the time I was just like, that's life. So
Yeah.
I went from having a panic attack to having I had a vacation planned. And I wish Shannon was here. Y'all know Shannon.
Yeah, shout out
But
to
I had a
Shannon.
hey girl. So I ended up going to Costa Rica with a few of my best friends. And it was while it was very reflective and in a moment that I enjoyed, it also showed me a lot about where I was mentally. So, for
Mhm.
example, the biggest example, and if my best friend Shannon was here, she would crack up because in
Yeah.
hindsight, this is crazy.
Mhm.
So it was we were supposed to go to what was it? It was like a what are those things? I sound crazy. A waterfall. We were
Uh-huh.
supposed to go to a waterfall, and we were supposed to go on this walking tour that took us from the bottom to like the top, right?
Mhm.
So end up it's pouring rain. When I tell you pouring rain, everybody's like, we don't need to go. Like the trip is canceled. And I was like, no, like, because they were like, I don't want to drive in the rain. I was like, I will drive in the rain. I'm so excited to drive in the rain. It's not even funny. So I was like, Simone,
My
my
God.
energy, the hindsight is so real because when you're in a place of mania or in a
Yeah.
manic episode, it just I was like, y'all are boring. Like,
And
what's
like
up with
everything
it?
is possible. Y'all are letting things limit you. Like, why are y'all, like
It
what's
gets
wrong with y'all?
weirder. It
Yeah.
gets weirder.
Oh my
It
gosh.
gets weirder. So I'm just like, yeah, I don't know how, but I talk everybody into going because I was just like, I'm gonna drive. Like, that's what you guys are afraid of. Girl, I get in the car. We stopped at the gas station because it was like an hour drive. Stopped at the gas station. And I got a Red Bull.
Mhm.
I chugged that Red Bull. I'm sitting next to Bree in the front of the car. The music's bumping. Now, mind you, if you've never been to Costa Rica or just anywhere abroad, honestly, the traffic and the way that the lanes are exposed to the edge of like
Yeah.
cliffs.
Yeah.
So it's like you're not in this like barricaded thing. So I'm driving wild as fuck. Like in hindsight, I was driving crazy.
Oh
So
my
I hear
God.
from the back.
No.
Me and Shannon
Jesus.
laugh about this till this day because she was like, "You dead thought it was funny," and I thought I was gonna die. But I'm whipping it and stuff, and I'm like really confident with my driving. And Shannon and my other friend Angel were in the back. They were like, "Can you slow down?" And I was like, "I got it." Like literally, I was like, "I got it." And I'm not a snappy person, but I
Yeah.
said it like happily. I was like, "No, I got it. Like
Yeah.
we're good. Don't worry." So I didn't realize the sheer panic everybody was in because I wasn't, in the right state of mind.
Right.
So end up getting there, mind you, we had to buy and we had to bring water shoes, right? So of course it just finished raining. So I'm just like I'm like, oh, like we made it through the rain. Everything became very like metaphoric to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once the rain stopped, instead of looking at it the way they were looking at it, like, okay, now the floor is wet because the floor rain. I was like, we were supposed to be here because we made it through the rain. Like everything was like making
Oh my
sense to
God.
me. And I'm a poetry ass bitch, and I'm
Right.
also God for me is also someone who enters my life in metaphors. So if I see like a rainbow, like it was clicking to me in a very different way. So ends up getting there. Everybody's scared to walk up the mountain. There's two mountains that lead to waterfalls. So there's one that's like, if you can't see, just imagine like a mid-level, and then there's a higher one, right?
Mhm.
So it's terrifying to get to the first one in the first place. So everybody's like shaking and like sliding, and we barely have anything like to kind of hold us because there's somebody leading us, but he doesn't have any like supplies. So end up getting to the second part. They were like, this is as far as we're going. Like this, we've done enough. Everybody enjoy it. They were all like, and I was like, I came here to see the glory of God. Like I came
Wow.
here, yo, Simone, I'm so serious. I was like, I came here. No, it sound, and you could laugh because I laugh about it now, but at
Yes.
the time, I was so
Yeah,
serious,
you were dead
and
ass.
I was dead ass. And I don't want to. I have to preface this with I'm not mocking anything. I just also want to be honest about how the state of mind where it can almost be normalized because it
Yeah.
is such an experience and feeling of excitement that
Yeah.
I think it's hard for people to grapple with. Like I didn't really understand it until after my diagnosis, which I'll get to. But for me, I was just having a great day, and I felt liberated because I've had so many bad days. So
Mhm.
the contrast for me, it wasn't like this thing that was like unusual. It was like you're on vacation. Life's been miserable back home in the States. You're here, you're not going to let anybody stop your shine because they may be okay in real life, but I'm not, and I really want to be here.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where I was at with it. And so fast forward, we get to the half part of the waterfall. So everybody's like, "Oh, the tour guide, there's a second one." He goes, "Anybody want to go to the top?" Girl, I
Of
said,
course.
"Yeah." But I really was like, God, I felt like God was calling me to the top of the mountain. Like, and I'm being
Mm.
very serious and very literal right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I went to the top of the mountain. Now, mind you, oh God, the the guy who's in charge, I know it's not funny, so thank you for the sympathy, but
Yeah, I'm just I'm here.
you guys, you have to laugh through certain things, and you will learn. I'm not only a nervous laugher, but also somebody who's been through it, and it'll be okay.
Yes.
So end up going to the top of the mountain, and the guy's name was Jesus.
Wow.
So
Convenient.
y'all
Convenient.
know me. When I said, oh God said to go up this mountain. Like what's that? Why did I get married? When she was like,
Oh
she only
yeah.
going up to save
Yes.
my marriage.
Sure, save my marriage.
So I was like, I'm going up the mountain. Like I came to see like the glory of God. So I get up there and there's like ropes. He's pulling me different directions, like for stability, but I easily could have injured myself. It wasn't anything that was like coordinated in a fashion to save you. It was more like you signed a paper, if you fall, you fall.
Oof.
So even seeing it is something that would have had intimidated me, and at the time it excited me. So I think even realizing that difference, like looking back at it, I'm like, okay, there is a warped perception of danger, and that's
Yeah.
also in the diagnosis as well. So I was going up there, shouldn't have been up there at all, but I literally jumped in the water. I'm like floating around. I don't even think you were supposed to be in the water for but so long because they had like blue crabs, like different stuff. But I was so determined to be a part of that experience and to live it that I really didn't acknowledge it or recognize it as anything else. So the reason why this part matters so much is because the crash that came after it was so drastic.
Mm.
So I end up going to Costa Rica, had a great time. I end up coming home. I was home for about 3 days. I ended up having some of my other friends come in from out of town because this is my summer,
Mhm.
right? So summer's for teachers. You're having the time of your life. So, or you're poor, but it's whatever because
Well,
you can't work.
yeah.
Both, both.
Both.
Y'all
¿Por qué
feel
no
me?
los dos? Yeah.
Both. So, um, okay, so I end up coming back. Some of my friends came down and I ended up getting very angry. So we got into it. One of my guy friends, he knows I love him, but this was about something, it wasn't random, and I had a right to be upset, but I was fixated on it. So
Mm.
I'm usually like, okay, because we fight like siblings, right? So I'm like, fuck you, leave me alone. Girl, no. It was like, fuck you, went to sleep, fuck you again. They
Wow.
ended up leaving. Yeah, no, I held it in because I'm
Yeah.
just like, you know what? And anybody who knows who I'm talking about Brian and Carl. I love them. They know
Right.
that. And there's like you guys, I talked about in my grief episode, there's 5 of us. Tyler's still present with us, but we all grew up in elementary for some and middle school for the others. So
Right.
we talk to each other crazy. So for me to acknowledge that this was a crazier crazy was like, okay,
Like
um,
something's different.
something's different. So I was upset. They end up leaving and I couldn't let go of what I was upset about, which is not like me at all.
Mhm.
So I live with Shannon, who's my roommate. I go into her room almost every day for 3 days straight. I spoke to her for like 2 hours about the situation. I was just mad. I was just like, I couldn't let it go. And I'm just like, "Ah, I can't believe this, can't believe that." Went to sleep, couldn't get over it. And that was another thing that was impacted was my sleep.
Mhm.
So my sleep, I had a lot of ruminating thoughts. I would think about it all night. I would wake up in the morning, still be fixated on it. And the more things that happened, the more my anxiety was like attacking me at night. It was very much like a you can't close your eyes because it's just whipping. Like,
Yeah.
like it's like a movie. Everything you've ever done in life is like you just sitting there. And I think, what's crazy is I've heard a lot of people say things like that. And that's almost kind of normalized because there is a level of like ponderance at night,
Yeah.
but it was also so disturbing that it was impacting like sleep is a big deal for your wellness. So fast forward, I go from being mad to the next day, I crashed. So I'm in my room, I'm on the floor, literally in a ball, just weeping, like weeping. And Shannon comes in and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, I couldn't tell you. It wasn't connected to anything. And I just want to say as a in between, and I know that I'm talking a lot, but
No, this is your story. Tell your
yeah,
story.
I want to be as helpful as possible. And I think I am gonna miss things and mess things up in nature because everybody's experience is different. But I also do want to say that I think it's difficult to catch all of these symptoms because life is so hard. So I
Mm.
think like there was always something to correlate it to. So it was like work is hard, relationships are hard, this is stressful. So it's kind of almost difficult for you to see when your reaction isn't aligned.
Right.
Does that
And
make sense?
yeah, and when you're in it,
Hmm.
it's real to you. So it's
Yeah,
hard. You're not looking at it from like hindsight. You're in the moment. So you're like, this is really difficult for me right now. And I'm feeling it in real time. So it's hard
yeah.
to kind of compare and be like, oh, wait, this isn't how it should feel, so
Thank
to speak.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So had the crying session, which I've been used to that, but this one was like not attached to anything. I was
Mhm.
having a great time. I knew I was upset because the guys pissed me off, but they always did. It didn't make me sad. It irritated me.
Yeah.
So if someone's laughing, I like they nothing new. I was like, okay. So end up like just in my room, like weeping. And I wanted to, you know, I think for TikTok they say unalive. So I'll
Yeah.
use that.
Yes.
So that was what I was feeling very, very heavily.
Mm.
It was
Mm.
hard. It was really, really bad. And I tried to wait it out, but it was like 3, 4 hours. And Shannon was like, I need to take you to your mom's house. So she picked me up, put me in my car, and ooh, um,
Mm,
I
that's
just
okay.
thank God for friends.
Yeah.
Um, because that was a moment that I really could have not been here. And I think in hindsight, it's like you don't know how God always has you covered, even in the midst of things like this. So it's crazy because it was like I just had random angels, because if I lived by myself, and a lot of people do and don't have support, this could have been a completely different story. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's bringing out that emotion in me. Um, but I ended up going. Shannon took me. Luckily, my mom and my stepdad at the time lived remotely close. It was like a half hour.
Yeah.
So she drops me off there. Um, and I just was like panicking because I just remember feeling like, okay, I still have to go to work. I still have to pay bills. Like, I don't have the time to fall apart. And
Hmm.
I think like even other people that I know, that's kind of the struggle of even getting help and receiving help, right? Because it's like there's facilities, there's places where you can restart your mind and kind of be able to take a break in a minute, but bills are still due, right? So, and there's things that disability doesn't cover. It's a detailed list of things that would prevent you from actually taking the steps. But I remember before I went in, I was just like, I don't know how to do this. So I ended up calling Tyler, and
Hmm.
he's no longer with us. But at the time, I ended up calling him, and I was like, I don't want them to put me somewhere. Like I was like, I don't want them to take me to the hospital. I'm afraid to say what's going on because I don't want them to put me somewhere.
Yeah.
And he was like, they're your family, they love you. And I was like, bills are stressing me out. I was like, I don't know what to do. And he was like, just tell the truth. Like, pride out the window, just tell the truth. So I ended up going inside, cried some more. Um, and fast forward, it ended up being okay. But what happened from there was I went to the psychiatrist. Now, mind you, right now I wasn't medicated because I all I had was the Adderall. And then
Hmm.
the time before that I was on another medication. I don't know. But long story short, I ended up going to the psychiatrist, and I had such a powerful woman. So my sister, and it's funny because Simone just asked me before I started,
Hmm.
like, how
Hmm.
have you and your sister always been so close? Like, my sister is that's my bitch. I'm
Yeah.
trying,
Period.
that's my bitch.
Exactly.
So,
Period.
so she made the appointments for me, and my family really rather rallied together. My dad, everybody just kind of like was like, okay, we got this. So my stepmom, so I ended up going to the psychiatrist. I couldn't speak. So I'm literally just sitting there like I felt like I was in a trance. So Janae's telling
Hmm.
her what's going on. The psychiatrist literally was like, "Can I play you something?" And I was like, I just nodded. She played me a gospel song. I don't even remember the name of it, but I had my y'all just know me and I love God, and it was such confirmation that I was with somebody who understood, because I think there's such deeply rooted conflict between religion and medication.
Absolutely.
And that's a different conversation, which I honestly do want to get into. But yeah, she played that for me. And then we ended up talking about everything. Janae told her everything she's seen. I ended up speaking for myself. And I always laugh because there was a comedian who this happened to her as well. But anyway, she told me the medications she wanted me to go on. There were 3. And I was like, okay, like I'm ready, whatever helps me. I'm at like the lowest point. And she was like, yeah, don't feel bad. Like Selena Gomez has bipolar disorder. And she just started listing people, but she didn't tell me I had bipolar. So I was like, wait,
Oh,
what?
like, wait, why are you telling me this?
So I was like, huh? Like someone be like, huh? I was
Huh?
like,
Excuse
huh?
me?
So she was like, yeah, that people can still function. And I was like, are you telling me that I have bipolar disorder? And she's like, yes, bipolar depression. It's bipolar too. So it was relieving, but also like, what the fuck? So the relief came first because I got medication. She also suggested that I get a dog for my mental health. So I
Mm.
got my Oscar. He's my mental health dog. And yeah, yeah, I'll pause there because it's a
Well,
long story.
yeah. I mean, first off, thanks for sharing that. I think the story behind like how mental health manifests in a lot of our lives can often be really tricky and like things you don't really notice them, kind of like what I was saying before. When you're in it, you just feel like you're having a bad day and like it's the worst.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
the additional aspect of it is understanding that that's a chemical imbalance in your brain. And just as you would treat a broken bone, you also have to treat mental health disorders. And so, the fact that you did get medical help and, I think partially, yeah, like mental health and spirituality. I mean, medication and spirituality is a separate conversation, but I think it
Mhm.
also does intertwine in this case because it let you know that the fact that your psychiatrist played you a gospel song
Yeah.
lets you know that God brings us people and professionals and doctors and medical staff to be able to help you along your journey. So they're not two separate things. If anything, they worked in tandem, you know?
It really reminds me of what my first therapist had told me because at the time, I think I just got a psychiatrist or I didn't have one, I don't remember. But I was basically asking her, like, if I have you, do I need to go get medication? Like, it was so long ago, I don't remember. But what she ended up telling me was psychiatry, the medication is going to help you live,
Yeah.
and the therapy is going to figure out how you want to live, like in the
Mm.
interim.
Yeah.
And that always stuck with me because we're talking life and death here. If we're being real about it, when it comes to people's mental health,
Yeah.
depending on how severe yours is. So when it comes to religion and it comes to this conversation of God, being a healer, this is all true. But I also believe He gives us our gifts, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the person who is a therapist or a psychiatrist, God planted that seed in them, to want to help, to want to study, to want to educate themselves on ways to help the human mind because we are human. So I think for me, like, at the time, we've gotten so much better as a generation. I think millennials are the generation that kind of normalized mental health. So it's been easier to navigate, but I also come from a religious background where my family didn't stop me from getting medication. They were very supportive.
Yeah.
But I have been in environments where it seems like it's the last step instead of you avoided prayer. You avoid, like, you know what I mean? There's just so many layers to what you should have and what you could have done first. And like you said, it's a broken leg. It's something that you would pray about in combination with your medication.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's less about like and I say this not saying that it's not possible. Like instead of relying on God's like in a miraculous way to come down and help you with something, I think the
Mhm.
prayer is more so like put the right people along my path, you know?
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes I think this is much more prevalent in more like traditional religious communities is that when you rely on anything else besides like talking to God first, it's assumed that like you're putting that before God.
Mhm.
When all throughout the Bible, there are tools that God put on people's paths for them to learn the lessons that God wanted them to learn. So, um, I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I think there's power in knowing that, okay, like God, you can pray like God, help me along the way. Like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? And I guess for me, just because I have a broader like idea of spirituality at this point in my life, for me,
Mhm.
like I'm recognizing that like in a lot of like cases in prayer, it's kind of like, okay, well, like God heal me, God heal me, God heal me, God heal me. And there's like a level of like rescuing that we expect, like an immediate rescuing.
Mhm.
Um, and I think and even like to kind of zoom out the lens, I think it is more so about saying, like, once again, there's a journey in this. And
Mhm.
I think the more appropriate thing that we can maybe learn to ask is like, God, help me along the way. Like, it's not like solve the problem for me, because sometimes part of that human experience is figuring out how to solve your own problem. But really, it's with God's assistance and guidance that you can get that solution.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the hardest part for me, and I think why I can also speak on it so confidently, is because I
Mhm.
did it.
Yeah.
I pray when I tell you weeping on my knees, because I've been going through this since I was 19. So I would be in college, specifically when I graduated, that middle zone. I think I graduated like 2021. It was like 2 years of just really, really bad. It was just bad. And first I was drinking, because that was a part of my like trying to be social. So
Yeah.
I had that season of drinking heavily, and literally just drinking and throwing up. It was like the messy type of
Mhm.
drunk that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like, "What's going on?" You know? And I think a lot of people do that as well. It's like, as Black people or people who are young or anything like that, it's like we have all of these opportunities to mask and socialize.
Mhm.
So it's also something that I think is important to acknowledge, because when you're older, I think you get to spend more time with yourself, and there's not as many vices and there's not as many things that are distracted, that mental health is so tricky that they can really mirror different symptoms in different circumstances. So it will look like PMS. It will look like, you were tweaking out because you were high. It will look like so I think getting older and really kind of having a lot less things in your system also allows you to understand and see things more clearly. But where I was going with that was, since I was young and when I graduated college, I just remember putting on a Sarah Jakes sermon. And that was when her sermon, Girl Get Up, was like, everybody was on it. And there was this part where she was like, God needs you to get up. Your mother, like, she was just naming all these people. And I was so convicted and feeling like, okay, God, just help me. Like, is this me? It was almost like I was battling against myself. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you try to will yourself out of low places.
Mhm.
And I think because I'm grateful because I tried that first. And I tell a lot of people, because more often than not, a lot of people are dealing with mental health, and medication is often the last result. And it's
Mhm.
almost freeing, because it's like you tried everything else. I'm a woman of God. I'm a woman of faith. I'm a woman who knows how to control her health, and watch what I eat. Like, there's so many things that people will say, and all of these things are true, like your diet and exercise. But if you want to die, you're not worried about broccoli or the staircase. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you'll have the energy to do that once you are medicated. So I guess like the younger me
Mm.
really wanted to hear that I can't will myself out of it. Like, it becomes such a place where it affects your self-esteem almost. Um, until this day, I always just have to acknowledge that my mind works differently, my capacity is different.
Yeah.
And I still deal with the self-judgment before diagnosis, because it's almost like you lived your whole life not knowing that. So you also spent that time in your life criticizing yourself or trying to fix yourself, right?
Mhm.
So I think there's just a moment of grace that you have to give yourself, and just knowing that when you didn't know, you didn't know. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's like putting the cart before the horse
Right.
in
Right.
that sense. Like, I think I think when you have, sometimes you can't, like, sometimes the problem can't be solved until it's recognized,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know? So the fact that you did it is a feat. And I hope you know that. Especially like being your friend in that time. Like I remember just like, you know, hearing about what you were going through. I didn't know the Costa Rica story. So it's really interesting. I don't know why. I guess I went, maybe it's just something at the time, maybe afterwards, like it was everything was happening. So it just wasn't important to share at the time.
It also I didn't see it as strange. So it was
Ah,
like I literally was like, "Hey girl, I went to Costa Rica. I had a blast."
yeah,
Like
that's really all I heard. I'm like, oh,
you knew
great.
I
Like she had a
went.
great time. Right.
Yeah, and to me, I was thrilled. So it was like
Yeah.
that was the version I brought to you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
perspective also changes as well
Yes.
with that information.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know you paused your story. Was there anything, something else you wanted to share?
No, I honestly wanted to ask you because we both have mental health as you've addressed.
Mhm.
They show up differently,
Mhm.
and I think by diagnoses, mine definitely sounds stronger,
Yeah.
but they're
Well,
also a clinical diagnosis of depression is huge, and anxiety is huge, and if nothing else, bipolar is just a combination of those just on, 1,000.
yeah.
So I wanted to acknowledge you as well because you also as a black woman, also as a woman of color and a woman in general, you've had to show up. And
Yeah.
I've seen you on days where it's like I don't feel like doing this. I don't want to do this. And you've had to. So I guess for me it's like also mirroring back to you that we share the same strength.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and yeah, if you want to talk about your
Well,
journey.
no, that was really poignant you saying that, like we have the same strength,
Mhm.
mirroring that.
Yeah.
Because it's not as intense of a case as like bipolar 2, and so of course I understand and empathize, and I
Mhm.
don't ever try to compare it because I don't think
Yeah.
it's the same, but I do recognize how much like depression has affected like my willpower in a lot of ways. I think I'm like naturally a very ambitious person, and I like have
Mm,
goals and like things I want to pursue. Sorry, I was fixing my septum right here.
that's
Sounds like it's
okay.
kind of cool. Um,
Yeah.
but um, but that depressive episode is so heavy. I remember like one of the first times I started to realize it, it was like everything seemed bland.
Mm, mhm, mhm.
I don't know why it's like making me emotional a little bit, but
'Cause it is.
it
Yeah.
is emotional. Like it's heavy.
Mhm.
It's very heavy. And so it's hard when everything within you wants to do something different, but it's like physically you can't.
Yep.
And one of the first moments I remember, like my family was having a like a birthday party at a pizza parlor,
Mhm.
and my mom was like, and I was like in my bed, like I did not want to get up, and
Yep.
I remember I like my mom was like, Simone, you have to get up. And I was like, I
Mhm.
really don't want to. She was like, I know, but you have to. And so,
Mhm.
and kind of similarly to what you said earlier, to use the TikTok term unalive, I think one of the main reasons at that time that I didn't consider that route was because of my mother.
Mm,
Like it was the
mhm.
one thing. I also it so after well to continue that. So I was like, I got up, I like didn't even take a shower. I just like brushed my teeth and like put clothes on and went, whatever.
Yep.
And my mom my mom also struggles with mental health too. And
Mhm.
so I also grew up a lot around therapy and like just mental health in general. And I think that's why my mom is so good at what she does, because she knows firsthand
Yeah.
what it feels like. And I'm so grateful to have a mom who saw it and was like, we like it's time to get you help. And so she
Same.
ended up like yeah, and it's a beautiful thing. Shout out to our moms. Like
Yeah,
all
shout out to our moms.
shout out to our mom.
Absolutely.
Um but she ended up taking me to like a urgent care for mental health, and like I ended
Wow.
up like seeing a doctor and like getting prescribed antidepressants and like getting therapy, and it really did help. And I remember like when my meds first started hitting, I was like, oh, it was
Girl,
colorful. I
ain't nothing
was
like it. That
like,
first week, girl.
for real, it's like, oh, this is the world. And I'm not gonna lie, like I feel like my libido was back. Like I felt like
Mhm,
myself again. Like,
mhm.
um, and so
Sorry,
it
my
was just
ass hurts.
no, it's okay. Oh, so mine does as well. So I will be doing that. But but yeah, I it's a struggle, but like realizing how far I come, but also recognizing too, like sometimes the journey is up and down. And
Mm,
so like there have been moments where I feel the best. And I'm like, okay, this is great. But then like those low moments come back. And so I think
mhm.
that's when your like mindfulness techniques, your therapists, like
Yeah,
honestly, for anybody who's listening right now, if you are off of your meds right now and you're starting to feel low,
yeah,
like I suggest you fully reconsider.
yeah, yeah. Because
Because
it's
yeah, go
mhm.
ahead. I know what you're go ahead. Yeah.
No, because people think, and I think that's another thing that's kind of hurtful and harmful as well, is thinking of it as a temporary.
Yeah.
So I think like what I've learned with my diagnosis, so like when Tyler passed, I had to up my medication
Mm.
because it was such a shift
Mhm.
um in my reality and my life that it really would have taken me to a different place. But I also realized once again that it what I had to increase it, not that I had to get on it. I had
Yeah.
to increase, I'm always on it. So it's like you have to think of yourself and your health as you need that baseline. And once you have that, like my mood is so regulated that I can distinguish a bad day from a depressive episode. And
Mm.
I think that consistency with medication is it's what it is because it's not temporary. I mean, depending on your circumstance,
Yeah.
but if something is prescribed to you, take it as needed because I think about it kind of like when they do antibiotics and they'll be like, take the whole thing because you will start to feel better. So that's kind of like that high that you feel
Yeah.
when your medication kicks in. It is the medication. It's not that you're
Yeah.
not capable, but it's the medication, babe.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. And I think too, I remember I brought this up to you at a point. I was like, especially because I feel like I am on my spiritual ascension and I'm like growing like closer and closer to God. I'm like, if I take medication, like will that stop
Mhm.
me from like
Mhm.
being able to like talk to God? Because
Mhm.
like I part of me feels like, is it because I'm a little like there's a chemical imbalance? Is that why I'm talking to God?
Girl,
Or
I
is
was
it
on the
like
mountain looking for Jesus. I feel
exactly.
I feel you. I feel you because
Yeah.
I was
So I'm like,
going up yonder, bitch.
right. But the
Yonder.
thing is, what I've seen through you and what you've, your journey is that if anything, you having it's almost like you're being treated for a mental health disorder puts you
Mhm.
at baseline so
Yep.
that you can ascend.
Yep.
When you're not, treating the issue, you're kind of like trying to reach baseline. But so imagine once you're at baseline, what you can reach,
Yep.
So it's been something like, I don't know, like, I mean, candid moment. You feel me? I am not on my meds. I'm not gonna
Girl.
lie. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, this is my process. Okay. This is so candid, but shit, we all deal with it. You feel me? Well,
Yes.
I hope we do. But I did this is crazy.
Go ahead.
I sound crazy.
No, you sound so human. Go, because people Simone, I'm so serious. People need that. They need it.
Why am I emotional? Is that why I've been sad? Maybe that's why. Maybe
It's a heavy subject, babe. It's a heavy
maybe that's
subject.
why.
It's not easy. And we knew, heads up, guys, we planned these episodes, of course, right? So this morning, Simone and I pushed this episode back recording like 5 times. So
Like,
first it was like, I'm recording at noon.
yeah,
Simone calls me, noon's not happening, babe. I'm like, yeah, noon's not happening. So then she texts me at, I think it was at 1:30. We're like, we're gonna do
1:30.
2:30. Then after that, I said something like, "Oh, it's hard to get up." You was like, "Well, fuck it, let's do 3." And I'm like, "You're a little too excited about
Yeah.
this."
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
a little too excited. So fast forward, we get on, because we do our sound testing, the things we have to do, and Simone's energy was so low and so you can just feel it. You can feel it, and it was heavy, and she kept trying to figure out why.
Yeah.
And I think seeing the emotions come out now is like, because of my diagnosis, it almost seems like it's only my conversation, and it's not.
Yeah. I mean, I want to give you space because you did bring it up, and I think your story is a powerful one, and so I don't want it to
Mhm.
be like, you know what I'm saying? I wanna talk about it too, but I
Mhm.
think, you know what I mean? It's just realizing how much of an effect it has on me, and I think it just took your story to kinda, like, bring it up
Yeah.
and
No,
realize it, you
it
know?
looks so different. It
Yeah.
looks different on everyone. It takes all these different shapes, which is why it's so difficult to identify. So, the more honest we are and the more different we are, helps everyone,
Yeah.
because there's somebody who is feeling it the exact way that you are. Somebody's is presenting as mine, and they're like, "Well, bitch, I wasn't flying up the mountain, like, maybe I'm good." And it's like,
Yeah.
"No, no. No,
Right.
no, no.
There's different ways. You got different mountains. It may not be this one, but
Different mountains.
you
Don't
got
judge my
mountains out
mountain."
here. Yeah. No, you're
Yeah.
right. You're
Yeah.
right. And I have made content, and I think I'm going to start making, well, I have a couple of videos in queue technically, but I
Mhm.
did make a video about being like a depressed Black millennial woman
Oof. Yeah.
and like, what it takes and like how that toll it takes on you and how to care for yourself. And I think I need to watch that video again for myself. I think I need to actually listen to that video. Um, because
Mm.
the truth of it is like it is about number one, like setting the intention.
Mhm.
It is number two about trusting the process. Number three, taking care of yourself. And I think also, I think I said it in the video, like if you need help, get the help.
Get the help.
Get the help. Don't try to conquer it on your own.
Don't try to oof. Because you know what's crazy? The first thing I think of when everybody's like, "Oh, will I change? Will I be?" And they're legitimate concerns, right? So it's like there's these stigmas of medication making you very dull and
Mhm.
or quote unquote, I hate the term, but like a zombie.
Yeah.
And it's not true, right? I seem fine. You seem fine. We're
Mhm.
funny.
We're funny.
We're lively.
Yeah.
We're talkative.
Yeah.
And if anything, we're just that consistently. Well, I'm on my medication, I guess.
Right. But as you can see, your girl is struggling.
No, literally.
I'm
You see it?
really
So, I'm
testament right
balanced.
here.
I have a balance, and it doesn't take away from who I am as a human being. Me not being medicated took away from who I was as a human being. And what it boils down to is that you can't praise God if you're not here,
Ooh.
And he loved, like, wherever you end up, God gonna love you. That's just it. But he didn't place you here to suffer.
Mm.
He didn't place you here to suffer. And I had to learn that, because I'm like, in my lowest moments, I reached for God, and I felt so liberated and confused when I got my diagnoses. But he wants me to be happy. And like you said, it was almost like um it was like a light switch come. I was like, people live like this? Like, I real because I've been struggling so long. I was like, people really live like this. Like,
Yeah.
I sleep now. I wake up because I used to have insomnia. So anybody who knows me would be like, "Oh, you're such a morning person." I'm not a morning person. I didn't go to sleep.
Let me tell you something real quick because there was one day that this bitch called me at 8 in the morning. She's like, "Hey, so what are we doing?" And I'm like,
Fuck 8.
it was like literally you were so talkative. I don't know, it was like maybe 2 weeks ago, but you were so talkative this morning, and I was in my bed like, what? Like, how do you have so much energy, bitch? I literally just opened my eyes, but that's how you know it's because you recognize the importance of sleep through.
And I'm
How do you get some
medicated.
rest? You
I
medicate.
didn't recognize, and I have to say that I
Mhm.
didn't recognize the importance of sleep and decide to go to sleep. And that's what, you know what I'm saying? I recognize the lack of sleep and my medic
Calling me out real
y'all
bad.
can't, for those who can't see, because this is audio and visual, Simone is being called out. This bitch is like in the deer in the headlights, like, ooh,
Yeah. And I
but and she looked like but
well,
in all seriousness, I just have to clarify that because that goes back along to the willpower, right? Go set your alarm for 8 o'clock, wake up and say, I can't because I'm having ruminating thoughts. I
yeah,
will never go to sleep.
yeah.
But now I'm on medication, and every day somebody asks me, how did you sleep? I said, phenomenally. And things in my life has changed. I can't go to sleep at the same time because it takes 8 hours, right? So I'm like literally can't drive a car. It's like I'm intoxicated, but I'll be asleep.
Mhm.
So things have changed in terms of like, okay, I can't stay up that late because I also have to wake up for work. So Shannon, it's funny, Shannon lives with me, and whenever the double digits hit, because I always count backwards from when I have to
Mhm.
wake up. So I'll be like 6:30, 5:30, 4:30, 3:30, 2:30. And then I'll be like, okay, we can watch another episode.
Yeah.
But it's also it's little things that save your life. Save
Mhm.
your life, and it doesn't change who you are. It made me be able to be who I am. And it's funny because I remember the grief episode we did, and you were like, "Oh, I don't see the Sagittarius in you." I had horrible self-esteem and depression. You know what I'm saying? So like not only is that aligned with me being more comfortable and manifesting like my growth and leaning closer to God, it comes with my wellness, right? So I'm not as one paranoid, two confused, three anxious. Like it almost shifted who I am. And now who I am is even more potent
Mhm.
because I'm on medication. So I guess like I just always wanted to debunk that stereotype that it will make you lesser of who you are because
Yeah.
if you're not here, you're not going to be anybody. Like it's
Mm.
just the truth.
Yeah.
So I always think of life and death because mental health can be so people throw the language out so much that I think they forget that it's not a bad day. It's not a bad day you have to order Chinese food. It's not a bad day you don't want to cook today. You some people, and that's another conversation, it goes into hygiene and the way you care for yourself
Yep.
and the way your environment looks, and there's people don't understand the extremes. And I guess for anybody who's really struggling and you have that self-doubt where there's piles of laundry in your room and you haven't cleaned your car for 40 weeks, or you don't feel like brushing your teeth or washing your hair, like there's it's
Damn, this is crazy.
yeah, it's a reflection of your mind.
It is.
And it's resolvable. It's difficult, but it's resolvable. And I guess I just want to be that voice that like shows people that you can still push through after the fact and you can still be successful. Like we're here on a platform, we use our stories and we use what we go through to uplift and help other people and ourselves.
Mhm.
But that's from a place of survival, and that's a place of being humble enough to know when I just can't, I've done all I can do,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a really important point. Um, I'm grateful that you brought this conversation. Um, Definitely, of course, as it is inspiring for the listeners, it is just as inspiring for me because, like, you know,
It's
to
okay.
see you on the other side, is
Yeah.
it's it's encouraging. And I think it just sometimes it's hard to face the music, obviously. And I think like going along for the getting along only works so much for so
Mhm.
long to the point where you're like, okay. But I think it's hard, I guess, for me in this sense, because I'm like, and this is like like recognizing, I'm labeling it before I say it. This is a limiting thought. This is a
Mhm.
I'm limiting my belief or my beliefs in myself by saying like, well, dang, was every like all of the growth that I've felt in the past year for nothing? Like that's where my mind goes.
Mm-mm. It will only grow. Your spirituality isn't a manifestation of an episode or something that you're going through.
Yeah.
It's what has held you this long. So imagine what you can be when you have that and you got some beads and some rocks. You know what I'm saying?
Some beads and some
You
rocks.
know what I'm
Crazy.
saying? You got Jesus, medication, and amethyst? Bitch.
Listen, that
Unstoppable.
unstoppable. Oh, you ate that.
Incense with a
You
little
know what?
Prozac?
It's Prozac.
Ain't nothing
Ain't nothing
touching you.
stopping. Ooh, I really like the way
Yeah.
you said that. That is actually no, seriously, that made me
Yeah.
excited.
You are who you are.
Yeah,
You are who you can't nobody take that away from you.
yeah,
Nobody. It's not going to dull you. It's going to give you the ability to be you consistently
yeah.
and not sporadically. And oh, I'm so proud of you. I feel so, oh, God is moving.
Well, I'm proud of
Ooh.
you for just, I don't know, being here and holding space and being that voice to like kind of speak to me in this moment, you know?
I just have like, and we had talked, I had told Simone, like, we usually run for about 45 minutes. And I was
Yeah.
like, this one is going to be longer because I feel so convicted by God to address every element of this. And although
Mhm.
I won't successfully, it is so necessary to speak on this as long as I can,
Yeah.
because this can be somebody's one opportunity. I remember when I was going through it, I had podcasts that I would listen to, and they really pushed me towards therapy. And it's funny because at the time it was Black Girl Podcast, which had Scotty Beam. It had a bunch of different people. And I loved it.
Mhm.
And Safira, it just ended up Ashley, whatever. The point is, it had all
Shout out.
these people on it. I'm like, shout out to all of y'all. It they just talked so much about what I was experiencing. And I think at the time, I don't think it was a mental health label. It was literally just about transitions in life. But I want to be the person that I needed. And I think
Mm,
that's always where I land. So I needed somebody to debunk the word crazy and
mm,
and say that it's not this violent thing that's to be mocked.
mm,
I needed somebody to tell me that medication wasn't a weakness. I needed somebody to tell me I wasn't lazy because I
mhm,
was depressed, or I wasn't an unreliable friend because I didn't have the capacity and stability. Um, and I needed to give myself grace even for how my life panned out because it was slower. You know what I'm saying? It had to be slower because I had to save myself first
yeah, yeah,
and then be able to jump into things. But God won't let you miss anything while you're healing. That's a part of your story.
yeah,
So I think for me, like, it was almost like, okay, everybody's getting into their careers and I'm up here trying to figure out how to eat. You know what I'm saying?
right,
Like, you
see,
know, but
yeah,
here we are. Here we are.
yeah,
And look at God.
look at
Oh,
God. This is exactly what was needed. I think this conversation was perfect and in every way.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, what any last nuggets of wisdom?
Listen to this as many times as you need to.
Mm.
And also, don't view us as people who have medical license. View us as
Yes.
somebody who is telling you to go seek somebody with a medical
I'm
license.
so glad you said that. We are
Yeah.
not saying you specifically should go on Prozac
No,
specifically. We're just
no, no.
saying seek medical advice
Usher hit though.
from a licensed professional, period. And good job, just because what we don't have time for is anybody being like, well, Flight Sauce said that we need to be on Prozac. So
No,
we
no,
didn't
no.
say that.
Don't do that. Get a medical
Don't do that.
doctor, get your paperwork,
Exactly.
blood
Yeah.
work.
All that.
But I want you guys to be healthy and blessed and know that we are here. And we always say like our platform is open as well for discussion.
Yes.
But you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay.
That's one of Jessica's favorite things to say to me. She's like, it's gonna be okay. It's all right.
It's gonna be okay.
Yeah. And it is.
Yeah. It's a real ass it sometimes you just gotta like, it's okay. Say it till you believe it.
It's okay. Facts. That's
Yeah.
very true. That's very true. And as someone who does tend to internalize and ruminate on my emotions, sometimes I think saying that kind of gets me out of that. Because I can say my emotions sometimes take the get the better part of me. But also I've been recognizing that we have the power to overcome negative emotions in all aspects. So remember that.
Perfect. I think this was a great episode, and I'm so grateful that we have a safe space. And we'll see y'all next time.
See you next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.